Okay, so as usual, Archanaji, because you have to leave early for the dispensary, will you read the first para?
Okay.
Okay. In
Yes,
the
Rangada. In the teaching of the Gita, which is more Catholic and complex than other specialized teachings and disciplines, these things assume a larger meaning. For the unity here is the all embracing Vedantic unity, by which the soul sees all in itself and itself in all, and makes itself one with all beings. The Dharma is therefore the taking up of all human relations into a higher divine meaning, starting from the established ethical, social, and religious rule which binds together the whole community in which the God seeker lives. It lifts it up by informing it with Brahmic consciousness. The law it gives is the law of oneness, of equality, of liberated, desireless, God governed action, of God knowledge and self knowledge, enlightening and drawing to itself all the nature and all the action, drawing it towards divine being and divine consciousness, and of God love as the supreme power and crown of the knowledge and the action. The idea of companionship and mutual aid in God love and God seeking, which is at the basis of the idea of the Sangha or divine fellowship, is brought in when the Gita speaks of the seeking of God through love and adoration. But the real Sangha of this teaching is all humanity. The whole world is moving towards this dharma, each man according to his capacity. It is my path that men follow in every way. And the God seeker, making himself one with all, making their joy and sorrow and all their life his own, the liberated, made already oneself with all beings, lives in the life of humanity, lives for the oneself in humanity, for God in all beings, acts for Lokasangraha, for the maintaining of all in their dharma and the dharma, for the maintenance of their growth in all its stages and in all its paths towards the divine. For the avatar here, though he is manifest in the name and form of Krishna, lays no exclusive stress on this one form of his human birth, but on that which it represents, the divine, the Purushottama, of whom all avatars are the human births, of whom all forms and names of the Godhead worshipped by men are the figures. The way declared by Krishna here is indeed announced as the way by which man can reach the real knowledge and the real liberation. But it is one that is inclusive of all paths and not exclusive. For the divine takes up into his universality all avatars and all teachings and all dharmas.
yeah, yeah. So the chapter is a divine birth and divine works. So in this one, we'll read each sentence and see what it says. Okay. In the teaching of the Gita, which is more Catholic and complex than other specialized teachings and disciplines. I'll stop here. The other specialized teachings and disciplines are very specific. For instance, the Jnana Yoga wants only knowledge of God and goes only through the mind. Then the Bhakti Yoga also wants only devotion and love for the divine, but goes only through the heart, not the other parts of the being. Then exactly in the same way, Karma Yoga also uses the will and the body and goes only through that, and they want liberation. So these are very restricted. But the Gita wants all. Okay, that's why it's saying more Catholic and more complex. It wants knowledge of the divine. It also wants love for the divine, but it also wants the divine works, karma yoga also. So that's why it is so more Catholic and more complex. Okay? That's what it's saying. These things assume a larger meaning. What are these things? He is referring to the Dharma, Sangha, and the Bhagavata. As I said, Bhagavata, Bhakta, and Bhagavan. Okay. So he has mentioned that also in the other one also. The everywhere these three things come in. Okay. He has also spoken about the Buddha, no? The Buddha, the Dharma of the Buddha, and then the Sangha. So these three things are coming in all the time. Okay, so that's what he's referring to. For in the unit, he is going to discuss these three things in this paragraph: the dharma, the sangha, and the avatar. These three things is what he's talking about. For the unity here is the all-embracing Vedantic unity by which the soul sees all in itself and itself in all and makes itself one with all beings. This is a Vedantic unity because this is in the Upanishads very clearly. The soul, everything sees itself, it sees itself in everything. That is what Srila calls the apprehending consciousness. You see yourself in everybody else, okay? Essentially, not the body. You see your own soul, your own consciousness in other consciousnesses. Outside, the face is different, the body is different. There's a sonnet of Sri Ranganath which says, to whichever face I turn, to whichever being I turn, I see myself with a different face. Okay? So that's a cosmic consciousness. But there's also the other one, okay? Sees all in itself. You feel, he has a sonnet again for that. He says, the largest stars in the universe are burning within me. Arcturus and Belphegor burn in me. So that's a comprehensive consciousness. You comprehend everything. So cosmic consciousness has got these two things, apprehending and comprehending. You see yourself in others and you see all others in yourself. When a person experiences this, it could be either this or that. Usually it's rare to have both. Okay. Then the Upanishads go on to say, this concept is put in this way. The one in the many, the divine in the many, in the multiplicity, the many in the one. Okay. But the last one is the most important one, the one becoming the many. In other words, the divine is even matter. Okay. So he himself becomes the many. In Latin first chapter also, if you remember, he says that matter is a fit instrument, a fit house for the divine to live in. That's the first. Then he says that matter is not only a fit house for the divine to live in, but he is the divine itself. Okay. So that is what the last one, the one becoming the many. The divine has become matter also. That's it. So that's what he is. This is the, and also is the, in the Gita also this idea is there. So, for the unity here is the all-embracing Vedantic unity, very clearly mentioned in the Upanishads, by which the soul sees all in itself and itself in all and makes itself one with all beings. The dharma is therefore the taking up of all human relations that we discussed is dharma. Dharma is not only moral or spiritual, it starts even at the lowest level. Okay? Even the Shudra has got his dharma, even the Vaishya has got his own dharma, the rule and the law of his being. Okay? He has to live according to the law of his being. The dharma is therefore the taking up of all human relations into a higher divine meaning, starting from the established ethical, social and religious rule which binds together the whole community in which the God seeker lives. It lifts it up by informing it with the Brahmic consciousness. Now the word informing, as usual, Swami uses this word to mean that you go into the form. Okay? Going into the form. Inherence. Okay? It lifts it up by informing it with the Brahmic consciousness. In the Sangha, that's what he's talking about. The law it gives is a law of oneness, of equality, of liberated, desireless, God-governed action, of God knowledge and self-knowledge, enlightening and drawing to itself all the nature and all the action, drawing it towards the divine being and divine consciousness and the God love as the supreme power and crown of the knowledge and the action. So you can see very clearly here, he is talking of God-governed action, God knowledge and self-knowledge. In other words, all three levels, okay? The transcendent, the cosmic and the individual. So, and also, he's saying, he is also talking of the action and the God love. So, the Gita is a synthesis of all the three: knowledge, love, and karma. Okay? So, that's why it is so complex and very Catholic. That's what it is. The idea of companionship and mutual aid in God love and God seeking, which is at the basis of the idea of the Sangha or divine fellowship, is brought in when the Gita speaks of the seeking of God through love and adoration. But the real Sangha of this teaching is all humanity. So it starts with the followers of the word Sangha is used in Buddhism. Okay. Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami, Sangham Sharanam Gacchami, Buddham Sharanam Gacchami. So this again refers back to the Bhagavata, the Bhakta and the Bhagavan. So this is all the three are necessary. So here he is saying that the Sangha need not be limited only to the followers of one particular, maybe Buddha. Even the same thing applies also to Sriyamnu Sangha. Okay? Those who have come into contact with the Mother and Sriyamnu, they make the Sangha. Of course, we don't see it in a very religious spirit because that's not the thing. But once you come into contact with them, you become their responsibility. They look after you. Okay? There is no doubt about that. In one place which is not published, he says that I will have more than 1,000 children and they will be the forerunners of the new race. Okay, so it's very encouraging to know that. So, the real Sangha is the teaching of humanity. So finally, it has to go to all humanity. And this idea is there also in the Upanishads, in a very minor Upanishad. Okay? That is it. Vasudha eva kutumbakam. If you want with the Sandhi, Vasudhaiva kutumbakam. So, the whole world is my family. That's what this is in the Upanishads also it is there, and even in the Gita also it is there. That's stressing that. The whole world is moving towards this dharma. Each man according to his capacity. It is my path that men follow in every way. So in other words, even at the lowest level of humanity, there is, in fact, he says in the synthesis, if you remember, all life is yoga. Because what is yoga? It's a travel towards the perfection. So you are traveling, even at the lower end, you are traveling towards that. But at a lower stage. So it's everybody is doing yoga in a sense, because there is always the urge for perfection. Everything, even in animals, it is there. Okay, so there won't be yoga consciously, but it's an unconscious yoga that happens. So it is my path that men follow in every way. And a God seeker, making himself one with all, making their joy and sorrow and all their life his own, the liberated, made already one self with all beings, lives in the life of humanity, lives for the one self in humanity, for God in all beings, acts for Lokasangraha. Lokasangraha is a word used in the Gita for holding together the worlds. Okay? Lokasangraha. Maintenance of the laws in the physical world. For the maintaining of all in the dharma and the dharma. For the maintenance of their growth in all stages. Note that, in all the stages. Even when you think you are not doing yoga, there is a growth, and that itself is the yoga. Okay. For the maintenance of the growth in all stages and in all its paths towards the divine. So all inclusive. He is explaining how it is Catholic and complex. Okay. The Gita. For the avatar here, though he is manifest in the name and form of Krishna, lays no exclusive stress on this one form of his human birth, but on that which it represents, the divine, the Purushottama, of whom all avatars are the human births, of whom all forms and names of the Godhead, worshipped by men, are the figures. They are the figures of the Purushottama. The way, yeah, the way declared by Krishna here is indeed announced as a way by which man can reach the real knowledge and the real liberation. This is something that we have to understand, and that which the Westerners often don't understand. Yoga is something Indian, okay? But we don't want yoga. We want to go through the Christian method. That's not true at all. Okay? It's universal. Yoga is something that anybody can apply. Those who are in the South Pole, North Pole, Equator, everywhere. It is something that belongs to humanity. It originated in India perhaps, but it is something that everybody can. There's nothing exclusive about it. All inclusive. But on that which it represents. They, uh, for the avatar here, though he is manifest in the name and form of Krishna, lays no exclusive stress on this one form of his human birth, but on that which it represents, the divine, the Purushottama, of whom all avatars are the human births, of whom all forms and names of the Godhead, worshipped by men, are the figures. They are only the figures. The way declared by Krishna here is indeed announced as a way by which man can reach the real knowledge and real liberation. The yoga is enunciated in the Gita. But it is one that is inclusive of all paths and not exclusive. The exclusion comes from the other areas. But in the Gita, there is no exclusion. It includes everything. For the divine takes up in his universality all avatars and all teachings and all dharmas. He has also stressed the three things. Okay. The dharma, which belongs to the, even at the lowest level, then there is a sangha, okay, the collectivity, and that collectivity has to become human, humanity itself. Okay. And the avatar is the one who helps this whole process. So all the three comes in again. Bhagavata, Bhakta and Bhagavan. The Gita includes all these things. That's what he said. Now we go to the next one. The Gita lays stress upon the struggle. We have got two more paragraphs. We can finish it. So,
Shall I read?
yeah, you can read.
Yes.
The Gita lays stress.
The Gita lays stress upon the struggle of which the world is the theater in its two aspects, the inner struggle and the outer battle. In the inner struggle, the enemies are within, in the individual, and the slaying of desire, ignorance, egoism is the victory. But there is an outer struggle between the powers of the dharma and the adharma in the human collectivity. The former is supported by the divine, the godlike nature in man, and by those who represent it or strive to realize it in human life, the latter by the titanic or demoniac, the asuric, and rashasic nature, whose head is a violent egoism, and by those who represent and strive to satisfy it. It is the war of the gods and titans, the symbol of which the old Indian literature is full, the struggle of Mahabharata, of which Krishna is the central figure, being often represented in that image. The Pandavas, who fight for the establishment of the kingdom of the Dharma, are the sons of the gods, their powers in human form. Their adversaries are incarnation of the titanic powers. They are asuras. This outer struggle too, the avatar comes to aid, directly or indirectly, to destroy the reign of the asuras, the evildoers, and in them depress the power they represent, and to restore the oppressed ideal of the Dharma. He comes to bring nearer the kingdom of heaven on earth in the collectivity, as well as to build the kingdom of heaven within an individual human soul.
Yeah. Okay. So, is the avatars. This definitely avatar that we are seeing. The Gita lays stress upon the struggle of which the world is a theatre. He has told us also earlier that the Gita's work is not only to dharma sansthapanarthaya, but also the be an example. So he has got so many functions. We have seen that. The first function is to the dharma sansthapanarthaya. Okay, destroy the evil-minded and help the good. That's the first one. The second one is to take one step further, the evolution to take it one step further. And the next will be the influence and the example that he gives to man, that this is the way you have to proceed on your spiritual journey. So that's what he's saying. Now he's saying there are two aspects, the inner struggle and the outer battle. Outer battle in the physical world. And that's very interesting because in the Mahabharata as well as in the Ramayana, that is the symbolic form of the war between the divine and the undivine. Now, if you notice very carefully, okay, in Sriram's case, he comes to do exactly that, dharma sansthapanarthaya. You must remember, is it a chance or a fluke? By chance it happened that the world's most dangerous evolutionary movement, or rather non-evolutionary movement, took place in Germany in the Second World War, and Sri Lanka is present in the world at that time. He came only to do that, to stop this, because he says very clearly that if Hitler had succeeded, okay, it would have taken centuries, if not millenniums, for the evolution to pick up again from where it left off. So he had to be stopped in any case, and that's exactly what Sri Lanka had to do. He was so busy with that whole thing. And the Asuric forces were trying to stop him from doing that. Again and again they did that. In 1938, just before the war began, Sri Lanka broke his leg. That was the work of the Asuric forces, which wanted the Nazi movement to succeed. Okay? So it took him back some time again, and after the war, he again picked up his work of the descent of the Superman. So it is not by chance that it happened. So very clearly, the definition of the Gita fits perfectly Sriramdo. So you can say that he very clearly the Kalki, the last avatar. So it's very, I just mentioned that as an interesting point. Yes, remember that. And Kalki also is described as lame. Okay. So what could be more indicative than that? Because you remember, Sriramdo broke his leg in 1938. So he is, from every point of view, he is the last avatar. Okay. It's an interesting fact. We have to correct the two. Kalki is lame. Okay. So I'm reading this now. That is a little bit of an aside. Now I will read the text. The Gita lays stress upon the struggle of which the world is a theatre. In its two aspects, the inner struggle and the outer battle. The inner struggle can be individual and the outer battle can be collective also. In the inner struggle, the enemies are within. In the individual, there you are. It's personal, individual. And the slaying of, and what are the difficulties? What are the enemies? Slaying of desire, ignorance, egoism. And the slaying is the victory. Okay? But there is an outer struggle between the powers of dharma and the adharma in the human collectivity. That's exactly that's why he is the Sangham. He is expanding on the concept of the Sangham. Okay? The concept we have spoken of earlier, Dharma, Sangha and Avatar. He is expanding on that idea. The former is supported by the divine, the godlike nature in man, and by those who represent it or strive to realize it in human life. The latter by the titanic or demoniac, the asuric and rakshasic nature, whose head is a violent egoism and by those who represent and strive to satisfy it. This is the war of the gods and the titans, the symbol of which the old Indian literature is full. The struggle, the Mahabharata, of which Krishna is the central figure. Just one minute. The struggle of the Mahabharata, of which Krishna is the central figure, being often represented in that image. So he is the warrior against the Asuras. The Pandavas who fight for the establishment of the kingdom of the Dharma are the sons of the gods. Their powers in human form, their adversaries are incarnations of the titanic powers. They are Asuras. And again, if you go back to the image of the Mahabharata, it's very interesting. The Pandavas are only 5 and the Kauravas are 100. Dhritarashtra had 100 sons. That also is very interesting. The darkness that opposes the divine movement is very large. Okay, that's a symbol. Very interesting. So, the Pandavas who fight for the establishment of the kingdom of the Dharma are the sons of the gods. Their powers in human form, their adversaries are incarnations of the titanic powers, they are asuras. This outer struggle, too, the avatar comes to aid. That's exactly what we saw in the worst possible danger came and he had to deal with them. Directly or indirectly, to destroy the reign of the Asuras, the evildoers, and in them depress the power they represent and to restore the oppressed ideas of the Dharma. He comes to bring nearer the kingdom of heaven on earth in the collectivity as well as to build the kingdom of heaven within in the individual human soul. So, so obviously, Swamdar is here very clearly implying that there is a individual progress, but there should be a collective progress. That's his whole idea. Throughout his writings, not only the individual must be liberated, but the evolution also must be liberated from its shackles to the past. It has to go one step further. That's why the idea of the collectivity always comes up. That's the reason why the ashram and automobile were made. The yoga should not be to individuals. We extend that to the collectivity. Everybody must benefit. So whole idea. Okay. Now we have the last paragraph chapter.
Shall I read?
Yes, Jasmine, please do.
The inner fruit of the avatar's coming is gained by those who learn from it the true nature of the divine birth and the divine works, and who, growing full of him in their consciousness and taking refuge in him with their whole being, Manmaya Mama Upastre, purified by the realizing force of their knowledge and delivered from the lower nature, attain to the divine being and divine nature. Madbhavam. The avatar comes to reveal the divine nature in man above his lower nature and to show what are the divine works. Free, unegoistic, disinterested, impersonal, universal, full of the divine light, the divine power, and the divine love. He comes as the divine personality, which shall fill the consciousness of the human being and replace the limited egoistic personality, so that it shall be liberated out of ego into infinity and universality, out of the birth into immortality. He comes as the divine power and love, which calls men to itself, so that they may take refuge in that and no longer in the insufficiency of their human wills and the strife of their human fear, wrath, and passion, and liberated from all this unquiet and suffering, may live in the calm and bliss of the divine. nor does it matter essentially in what form and name of putting forward what aspect of the divine he comes. For in all ways, varying with their nature, men are following the path set to them by the divine, which will in the end lead them to him and the aspect of him which suits their nature in that which can best follow when he comes to lead them. In whatever way men accept, love, and take joy in God, in that way God accepts, loves, and takes joy in man. Ye yatha mama prapadayanta tim. Sorry, I can't say all this.
Okay, don't worry.
Even the footnote is totally in
Ye
Sanskrit, which
yatham
I'm not capable of
prapadyante.
reading off.
Okay. Ye
Shall I
yatham
say?
prapadyante tans tathaiva bhajamyaham. We will have a quick look at it. We can finish it today. We've got 8 minutes. Just enough time to finish it. The inner fruit of the avatar's coming is gained by those who learn from it. The true nature of the divine birth, those who understand what is the purpose of the divine birth, the avatar, and the divine works, and who, growing full of him in their consciousness and taking refuge in him with their whole being. So everybody is quoting from the Gita itself. Man maya mam upashrita. Man maya, same as translated here also, growing full of him in their consciousness. So man maya means man maya. Okay, man maya means actually it is from the mat maya. Okay, thinking of me all the time. So when you are remembrance of the divine, you are full of the divine thoughts, divine emotions, and even the divine karma. Okay, so that's man maya. Mam upashrita, who have taken refuge in me. So if is translated, the translation is coming first and the quotation is coming afterwards. Okay, so growing full of him in their consciousness and taking refuge in him with their whole being. Okay? Man maya mam upasita. Purified by the realizing force of their knowledge and delivered from the lower nature, attain to the divine being and divine nature. Not only the divine being, but divine nature. Huh? So everybody is stressing. The divine being is rising to the second level of the spiritual planes. But divine nature, you can also put on the divine nature at the lower level. Okay, that's Sridhar's whole idea. Okay, that's he goes on stressing that it's not enough to have spiritual liberation. You must also liberate the nature. That's his whole idea. Transform the nature also. The avatar comes to reveal the divine nature in man above this lower nature and to show what are the divine works. Free, unegoistic, disinterested, nishkama, impersonal, universal, full of the divine light, the divine power, and the divine love. So here also he is telling very clearly, divine light, knowledge, divine power, Shakti, and divine love, Bhakti. So all the three have to be combined. He comes as the divine personality. He was earlier is impersonal, now he is also combining the personality. Okay, Purushottam, which shall fill the consciousness of the human being and replace the limited egoistic personality so that it shall be liberated out of ego into infinity and universality, the cosmic consciousness, out of birth into immortality, out of birth into, when you come into birth, you are coming into ignorance and you are mortal. But when you rise to the spiritual level, you realize that your soul is immortal. Body, mind, life is mortal, but the soul is immortal, and that's what you really are. He comes.
Ranganath,
Yes.
one
Yes.
one question, please.
Yes.
The
Yes.
humans before Ramavatar and the humans before after Ramavatar, was there any difference in the consciousness, in human consciousness? Means Avatar has come to change the consciousness.
Yes.
So whether
Every time an avatar comes, there is certainly a small degree of progress in the collectivity. Otherwise, what's the point in his coming? There is
that's what I mean. Then again they have fallen down to that level when again the Avatar needs to come back.
yeah, that is also true because the evolution is cyclical. Okay. So, but there is not all men progress. That's also one thing. A section of humanity progresses. Okay. That's true. There's an up and down movement of the evolution. Okay, so that's true. So he comes by the divine personality, which shall fill the consciousness of the human being and replace the limited egoistic personality, so that it shall be liberated out of ego into infinity and universality, out of birth into immortality. He comes as the divine power and love, which calls men to itself. So, this called men to itself is very interesting, because many people come to Srimjo and Mother by the call of their own soul. But there are 3-4 cases in the ashram where they were called to come to him. Okay? There was a case of Kanai Ganguly. Kanada was our French teacher. And Srimjo told him that you are coming from a very high plane. Okay? Your soul is a very high level and it's come down. So he was called. Okay? Call him was the answer given when he applied for coming to the ashram. Also, the other Tamil man who used to live was a medical student. He was a medical student and he passed his MBBS and he came from a very good family. In fact, it is his money that bought the Prosperity House. Ashram is made of 4 houses and each one was bought by Rajangam, one was bought by Srinivas Iyengar, no, not Srinivas Iyengar, sorry, Dorisamy Iyengar, one was bought by Dara. Dara was a Muslim man who came from Hyderabad. Okay, so that was interesting. And the 4th one was the Prosperity side, the northwest side. That also was bought afterwards. The whole building was 4 buildings. So he was called.
Ranganath, which
Yes.
calls men to itself, why not to himself or itself? Why there is a difference? He comes and as the divine power. So it is the divine power which calls.
And calls men to itself. Okay. The itself is
To the divine power and love.
It is for power. It is for power.
Power, divine
yeah.
power.
Power and love. Okay.
Okay, that's it. Yeah. I suppose that's why he's saying itself. Okay. It also becomes a little impersonal. So, then he's saying, no longer in the, so he comes to the divine power and love which calls men to itself. I stopped at it, which calls men to itself. So that they may take refuge in that and no longer in the insufficiency of their human wills and the strife of their human fear, wrath, passion, and liberated from all this unquiet and suffering, may live in the calm and bliss of the divine. He has quoted those 4 lines. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvata tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti na eti mam eti so Arjuna. He comes to me once he is liberated from me. So then the last one, how it comes? Vita raga bhaya krodha. Vita raga. Raga, attachment. Bhaya, fear. Krodha, anger. Getting rid of all these things. Man maya mam upashrita. Taking refuge in me alone by constant remembrance. Bahavu jnana tapasa puta. Jnana tapasa. By the concentration and knowledge, they become pure. Puta. Mad bhavam agata. They have come to me. That's what he says. Nor does it matter essentially in what form and name are putting forward, what aspect of the divine he comes. For in all ways, varying with their nature, men are following the path set to them by the divine. It is interesting. Each soul has got one aspect which has to be realized. And that's why the Swabhava concept also comes in here. Okay? Each soul has got its own Swabhava, which is not the same as others. Essentially, you are all divine, but then each one has got a different function to come into the world, and that's a path to follow. Okay? Following the path set to them by the divine, which will in the end lead them to him, and the aspect of him which suits their nature. Just note that, it's very interesting. Each soul has got its own purpose and achieve something in the physical world. And the purpose is 100,000 million, endless. Each soul has got a particular function to do. Is that which they can best follow when he comes to lead them. In whatever way men accept, love and take joy in God, in that way God accepts, loves and takes joy in them. So, this is a very famous quotation from the Gita. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sadaiva bhajamyaham. As you approach God, so he approaches you through the way you are approaching him. He gives himself to you according to your requirement and your prayer and answer. Okay? So we stop here today, and next time we'll go on to the divine worker. What is the work that the divine has to do? Avatar is divine work. What does he do? We'll look at that next time. Okay? I'm stopping.
Thank you, brother.
I'm cutting the line today.
Radha Masi.
Thank you, Rakesh.
Thank you for